Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm so excited you're joining me again for another episode of What's on Your Plate. Today I am having an amazing conversation with my friend Paul Stofko in the very first interview episode of the podcast. I'm really excited to share this with you because Paul has so much insight and so much perspective that you're just going to soak up all the gems and the golden nuggets that he drops throughout this conversation. I'm really excited that I get to share it with you. So without further ado, let's start the conversation. All right, welcome to What's on Your Plate. I am Sarah, your host. I am here today with Paul Stofko, whom I am lucky enough to be able to call my friend. He is one of the first people that I thought about when I was entertaining the idea of starting a podcast, just because I think he is inspiring on many levels in his life. And lucky for all of you, he agreed to come talk to me today. So you all are just as lucky as I am. He is father, husband, exercise physiologist, running enthusiast, winner of several ultra marathons, race director, friend to many, including the LGBTQ plus community. His accomplishments are far too great to list here today, but that is some of his amazingness. So welcome, Paul. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
As I said, you were one of the first people I thought about when I thought about entering this type of journey. And there's just so many things that the way that you live your life, and so many ways that I feel like you have overcome and pushed through. And I'd love to hear you talk about things like being capable of more than we think we are in many, many ways. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess for me, I wear many hats, and there's other stuff
Right.
that we're involved in. But I think for me, probably when I was younger, I wasn't involved with a lot of different things. And then, as you get older, you become a father, husband, and those kind of things. And I think for me, you want to get involved with things that you have passion for. So, running has been a part of my life since high school. So that has always been kind of part of my life. Then that pretty much fueled me to do my degrees. So first I was nutrition major at Purdue Cal, which is whatever, it's a Purdue West, whatever the heck it is now. So I have my associate's degree in there, but then I was like, you know what? I wanted to do exercise science. And at that time, Purdue Cal didn't have that degree. Now they do have that bachelor's degree. But I said, you know what? I want to go somewhere out of Northwest Indiana. Some random website I went on, I found it's a college that was offering that bachelor's degree in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I packed my bags and left, here just to kind of go and explore the different areas. I think for me, especially in college, I was able to kind of get away from Northwest Indiana. So you experience in different cultures, religions, faiths, those kind of different things. So I think I've had a pretty great life where I can kind of go and meet different people and through running and all that kind of stuff. And then everything that I've done is kind of around there. So I think I always wanted to make, people aware that, there's so many different things that you can do in your life. You're capable of more than you think. And that's kind of like the theme of a lot of the stuff that I talk about. Even from a small town, growing up in Cherville, did I have any idea what I was going to do and what I do now? No way. So I think for me, that was the thing. I just wanted to kind of experience different everything, areas, people, that kind of different things. And that's why it's kind of led me to, how my life is now. So I have a little bit of dabbling in a little stuff. I'm not a master in anything. I think I'm learning in anything from ultra running to fatherhood to husband to race director, I can never say that, oh, I know everything. I don't. So, so I think the people that I hang around with or that I have part of my life are always a constant encouragement. And I think we have seen this, or I think you have maybe mentioned it. You try to avoid the people that definitely want to look at the bad sides or aspects of life. I mean, again, there's all kinds of bad things that are going on in the world. But it's kind of your life and what you can do to make it better, no matter what aspect of the life. I try to do, even in my job, I work with seniors. So for me, that is like an opportunity. When I first started in fitness, I never thought I would end up doing that. My big thing was like, I'm going to work with athletes and I'm going to train these like high intensity athletes. And I did dabble with that when I was in college, but then, 13 years ago, I got a chance to work with seniors, and it was a temporary job. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. And I can say honestly, of all my 25 years in fitness, I mean, that's like the greatest time I've ever had, is working with seniors. And there's so much stuff that we can learn from older individuals. I think they don't give them enough credit. The knowledge, gosh, I can go on and on about that. My residents that I get to work with every day.
Yeah, I'm sure you have just heard so many different stories over the years and met so many interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine you could probably write a book.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you will one day. That'd be an amazing endeavor, just to hear the stories of the people that have influenced your life. How do you think that, what do you think is one of the best and worst things about working with that part of the community?
We'll start with the best.
Yes.
I can honestly say, being a husband and a father, and the knowledge in terms of the individuals that I come to meet, you just listen. I think that a lot of people tend to think that seniors, they blow them off, like like for instance, maybe they don't understand technology or an iPhone or whatever, but their life experience, at the age of 80 or 90 is greater than anything that you're going to get on the internet. And, I think that is the greatest aspect of working with those individuals, just listening. I mean, the stories that they have, most of our residents now, unfortunately, we are in the phase where people that served in World War II, most of them have passed away in terms of the aspect that I work at. So if you did serve and you did see service, you'd probably be like 95, 96. So we only have maybe a few residents like that. Now we're getting to we have residents that are like Korean veterans, some in Vietnam vets. So I mean, those kind of stories. One in particular that I always can remember, one of our residents, she was in an internment camp during World War II. If you're familiar with that, Japanese Americans at that period, they had the feeling that they were going to be infiltrating the United States, so they put them in intern camps in California. And you would think, when I would talk to her, I said, aren't you like mad, being in an internment camp for 2 years? And she had no ill will towards the United States for, what that occurred. And that kind of related to the fact that, God, if this lady can forgive the people that did all that for, 2 years, and, I'm arguing with my brother for some dumb reason. It's like ridiculous, so I think that you kind of get in perspective. Now, on the other hand, where you work with seniors, the duration that you get to see these individuals, a lot of them are, older individuals, health problems. So, in the 13 years I worked, I've seen, the good, bad, and ugly, from people that started off as an independent resident, very fit, to, going to different levels of care, from assisted living to skilled living, and then, ultimately passing away, which, I mean, that's tough. That was difficult, especially when you're working. In general, I was working with people that were fit, middle-aged people that I never would witness that. But in what my field is, that's going to happen. Or to see people that are very active, and then they have some dramatic health problems. Alzheimer's disease is very difficult. It's one of kind of my, things I raise money for, the Alzheimer's Association, just because I see that every day from people that, that I work with, and to terms how that puts a stress on not only them as an individual, but their families. So yeah, the positive outweighs the negative, I guess, in that aspect of what I do. But that is tough, especially I always tell people, you get close to these individuals. My grandparents are no longer with us, and they have not been with me, or thank God, going on 10 years, 10, 15 years. So like when I go to work, I feel like I have another opportunity to see my grandparents and talk about my kids. And, I think that's kind of a nice, you have like a huge family, in terms of independent residents, we have like 110. So not everybody comes to the fitness center, but in general, like, I'll come to work and talk about, my son's baseball game, or my daughter's, because they're part of my life. That's like, I guess it's for another opportunity. If I can't have my grandparents, I can at least, have them as part of my life, in a small way. And then, the nice thing about that is, when individuals have people come to visit, for instance, Friday when I worked, there was a lot of families that were coming in town to see their mothers, for Mother's Day at our facility. So we get to see their family. And, it's always nice to have people come in and say, my mom appreciates everything you do for her, or she loves coming to the fitness center. She loves the little fun things that you do. I mean, that's, you don't get that. I've worked gyms and did all that stuff. I enjoyed that, but I guess the appreciation is fairly different with seniors, because it's you get to see them constantly, and there's more than just like, let's do exercise and go home. Like literally people come and just like talk, or come into I'm like kind of like the gateway to all the different parts of the facility. We're right in the center of the building. So everybody comes and visits and sits down and talks about something or whatever. So, I like that when people just come in, and it had nothing to do with fitness, but just to come in and chit chat, or ask about how did my daughter do in her soccer game, or, how's your wife doing, that kind of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. In some ways, what you do every day is fighting a losing battle.
Correct.
Right. Because that for many of these seniors, probably all or most of them, they're not getting better in a way to like end up going home again.
Correct. Yeah.
How do you deal with that type of mindset of, knowing that you're improving their quality of life, I would imagine, day to day, especially sharing your own personal life with them on those levels. How do you process the other end of that, though, knowing that battle is ultimately not going to be won, at least not from a human earthly level?
I think for me, you just try to do the best you can with the time you have left. Some of them residents, are independent residents in terms of that, are fairly healthy, and are very active. But then again, as you go through different levels of care, like assisted living is, again, we're going to more, they have more assisted. So their ability to do like outside activities or go on trips is kind of limited. And then when you get into skill, that's like a totally different thing. So that, in terms of me as an individual, skill is very difficult. And in general, I work with more independent residents. But before I came to the facility I'm at now, I did 3 years where I just did more skilled, and that is that is very difficult, because in that time we went through COVID, and gosh, we had a horrible outbreak. And gosh, I can tell you, like, as a healthcare person in fitness, like I never. Like my wife's respiratory therapist. So they see they see people die, and they see that. That's not fitness. We see people pass away because of old age. We see past people that were fairly healthy, and then they get COVID, and then it's just like a horrible. And that particular time in my life was like, it's tough. Like I go to my lunch hour and cry, because it was just difficult to see these individuals. You work with them for years, and they end up passing away, and that was just tough.
Yeah, it's your vulnerability in sharing that. I can't imagine, that was such a, and continues to be such a hard period of time in our lives. And I feel like people in your position were way more in the trenches of it, day in and day out. And, you know, being with seniors and people at that stage of life is hard enough, but to see them, making strides, and then it's like the door is just shut.
Correct.
It reminds me of that notion of, I always cringe anytime somebody says, oh, it sucks to get old, or you don't want to get old. But in my mind, it's what a privilege it is to get old. I mean, the alternative is not desirable. I wouldn't choose to die young.
Correct.
So that's just something that comes to mind when I think of people in your situation working with people of the aging community, that those that are trained and capable and passionate about helping them is just amazing.
Yeah.
What a service you're providing.
Yeah. Healthcare in general, it's just been kind of a tough road. I mean, my wife's been in respiratory therapy probably close to 20 years. And, even COVID got to the point where she saw all the outbreaks, and she saw, my wife is pretty to the point where she's, I hate to say it, but hardened. Like that would be a nurse, that'd be anybody, a doctor, those kind of different things. I guess when you have COVID, even with seeing things that you have seen in the past, it's just the volume and the the despair. And I guess for me, that was difficult because that's not me. I mean, that's fitness. What? We don't see that. We have people pass away, but to see that where it's now, it's like, oh my God, I'm in the thralls of, pandemic. And I always tell people, when you come to the fitness center, it's like a positive thing.
Right.
And that was not, I'm not ready for like bad things and things that are happening and trying to deal with that. So for me, that was like totally like, whoa, like my psyche is not developed to handle like that, like my wife can go in and like, she can do her job, and she can, that's like clinical care or doing CPR or whatever. Then people pass away, and then she goes on to the next person. Well, that's not me. I mean, I remember the bad thing about that particular time is, so not only did you have this COVID outbreak, but then you had no family connection with the individual. So you had these like posters on the wall, and they're yelling at their family from the parking lot. It was just, I understand all that in terms of the procedure, but God, to not go through that, I guess, for me, that was something unheard of in a fitness field, to have to be like, oh my God, this is not, I don't know how to handle this emotionally. And, it wears on you, because that positivity ain't getting that back. Like, when I would do my job, people would pass away from old age, or there's some things they had, problems before. And that was easy to kind of just like, hey, that was understandable. But then with COVID, you had a person that was probably, doing the best that they could in terms of the situation, to have something just like take them away, and then have no family there to talk to them. And at that point in their time that they were going to pass away, nobody there. Oh, it's god awful. That was tough. I remember that time I was like, and that kind of, I hate to say it, but when another position opened up to work with more independent residents, I took it, because I felt like I just can't do that again. I just can't, even though I still work with skilled, it's a very small segment of what I do now. I primarily do independent residents, because we can do fun things. Like, I don't know, we had grilled cheese sandwich day. We have hamburger day coming up. That kind of stuff. We can go out and we took them to the dunes to do a presentation over at the Lakeshore, the nature center. That is what I missed when I was gone away from that independent residence. And it kind of pushed me into like, what, I can't do this anymore. I can't work skilled all the time. That's just not me. And it's just very difficult, because then with those people that you work with in skilled care, is you would see them, you would like take them down to the fitness center, work, do your whatever they needed to do in terms of exercise. You take them back to the room, and that was your only interaction. You didn't have any like long conversations about their family or what they did for a living or whatever. And I'm like, as a working with independent, residents for most of my time, I needed to get back to that because I needed to, listen and talk and be interactive, not just like, okay, your 30 minutes is up, I got to get back to the next person. And that was just kind of how I did it. That wasn't me. And it made me like think, you know what, I got to personally to be emotionally to get away from that. I needed to do more independent. And then when I went back, I felt like this is what I need to do. I mean, I felt like this is home, and I had, I enjoyed that. You miss that interaction with skilled. I mean, God love those people, but it was just so difficult to be like, here's your segment, I'm off to the next person. Here's your segment, I'm off to the next person. There is no like, you may see them in the hallway or whatever, but it's not like you're sitting down. When I have independent residents, my office is in the fitness center. So literally I just walk to my desk, and if people want to talk to me, they could talk to me and they could come and see me. But with skill, it's like, they're in my room, they're out of my room, they're in my room, out of there is no like, thing. So I think for me at that point in my career, I'm like, you know what, I just can't do it. Some people can do that. It's just not, and then I think that took a toll on everything from your positivity to your anger to, so much stuff was going on. It was just like, I don't know. It was just a bad time. And, I'm not saying that I was like, on the verge of emotional breakdown, but I can definitely say it put a damper on who I was and who I am. And I just needed to get out of that situation. So I have no qualm. I mean, I've, been more independent. Like September of last year, I started with the facility I'm at with has primarily more independent residents. And I never looked back. It was like, that's what I can do. That's the interaction from the residents and even the staff, when we did a lot of skilled stuff, you just see the staff periodically, but now in the fitness center, we're just like kind of the hub of everything. So that's what I enjoy. I mean, I guess, God bless anybody that can do the healthcare and the nurses and my wife and all that, but that's just, I don't know. I just remember just a lot of times just, oh God,
yeah,
it's just horrible, just a horrible, like, you dwell on that at home, you dwell on that on your lunch, and I don't know, just was something that was not my forte. So I'm glad where I'm at.
Yeah, it sounds like you found you for sure solidified your niche and who
Correct.
you want to help in that type of field and environment. And honestly, I'm not sure. It does take a special kind, and honestly, it humanizes you to know that you can't just, because much to dispopular belief. I mean, many people feel like you're superhuman in a lot of ways, especially as it pertains to running. You have some extra chip that the rest of us don't. Knowing that you're human, I think comforts some of us in some way. But how does running play a part in that? I mean, do you in part run for the reason to process all of the hard things in your life and all of the stress in your life? Why do you choose to do what you do in that regard?
I think, I had a discussion with somebody the other day, and their running for them in particular is to get like awards and medals. And I remember maybe in my early stages of my career when I started running when I was young, that was big. And then, then I started doing ultras. So, ultra distances, anything above the marathon distance, consider that. So then I kind of, that was never big to me in terms of getting like whatever awards. I'm always happy to do well. But in terms of, like you said, I think it emotionally, it evens me out to the point where I am more a person that looks internally as I run longer distances, and the whole aspect of time and placing and all that is not the main goal. I mean, yeah, I always want to be great, but it's especially the distance that when you go like beyond like the 100 miles and those kind of things, there's a lot of time by yourself to really find out who you are. And and I've had situations where I had to drop out of a 200 miler, and then I came back and a couple years later did it again, and and horrible weather, and finished it. So there are times in my and especially during COVID, that, I mean, definitely running. I never have ever taken a break from running. Running has been like entwined in my life. So if they're, even after like a big race, so like say I do 100-miler, for me, it's like after a week, I just get edgy to the point where running is just, it's this part of me. So if I don't do it, then I just, I don't know. It'd be like emotional control in terms of helping me process like things that I just can't do at the moment. So I think for these long distance runs, I get to do that, and you have a lot of time, either by yourself or with friends or whoever. And, and sometimes even with people that you're running with, when you're in long runs, you're not talking to them. They're just like leading you and you're just in your own little world. And I think that that's why I always enjoyed ultras. I kind of got into the point where that's my race. 5, 10Ks, it's just too tied into time and pace and all that. Ultras is like you go out there and you're just like, you have a whole nother world. You have it feels like there's a whole life that goes on, and for 24 hours or however long out there, it's just and I think for me that balances me out, because I try to be, as positive as possible in most of my endeavors. So, and I can tell a lot of people, there might be some aggressiveness or meanness that does come out when I don't do that stuff. So that definitely helps me out, because I think a lot of times too, I get frustrated with something that's going on with ever. And I can tell you when I go out for a run, that just takes me back. It's like, all right, just work it out, work it out in your mind. And I think that is the aspect of running that is important to me. And that has come over years. I think I started running when I was 15 and now I'm 46. So I think as a runner, you change, you look upon running differently. For me now, it's like a stress relief and opportunity to go out and think about different things. A lot of the races that I develop as a race director come to me through running, just running and thinking, well, that would be a good idea, or we should run over there or something like that. So, and the same thing for like work related stuff or stuff at home. I think if I when I'm on my runs, I can dwell with it and just kind of use, I'm in my own little world to kind of figure out what's going to be the best outcome for me in terms of what I need to do for this particular, project with kids or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like that notion of, I really like to think back on movement provides clarity provides action
mm-hmm.
provides success. It just sort of all snowballs together.
Yeah.
And,
Mm-hmm.
once you create that space for yourself mentally to actually think about the things and process them, feel like it's much easier to move forward towards those goals or things that you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Would you say for you, running is almost like your form of medication?
Yeah, I think that's my Zen is a Zen moment, as I like to say, my religion, I guess you can say as well. Yeah, I definitely think that works for me. And I some people use running as like a very competitive thing. And I think that we have mentioned this before. I think a lot of times when people hear about stuff I do, I feel like they think I am like this guy that just goes crazy. This is the issue that I always have when I talk to people that I first meet them. They know of me, not me. They see the things posted, or they know this guy ran 200 miles or whatever. And then I meet him for the first time, and they said, "I don't think I can run with you because I think you're going to run me in the ground or whatever." And that drives me. And I talked to Aaron, me and Aaron got together. And I talked to Aaron. I said, I just don't understand why people always think that. And then we invite them out. I invite people out all the time for runs that we do. And I feel like, man, they just don't want. I mean, I understand if you don't want to run with us, that's fine. But I feel like these people think that I'm going to drive them to prove a point. And you know who I am. I would never do that. If you're coming to run and you're new to running, and just come with us. And I that drives me like batty. Like I'll meet people at races and they have this impression about me as this like, oh, well, we can't run with you. And I don't know. I always like running with different people. And that I think I run into a lot of resistance towards me, and I don't understand it. And
I can tell you why it happens. I'll tell you right now why it happens,
go ahead.
Paul. I love running with you. I miss running with you. Hopefully you can get back to that one day. But on the surface, for people who don't know you,
Correct.
You can be highly intimidating because of your accomplishments. They don't know how humble you are and how just arms wide open, embrace anybody that wants to run type of guy you are.
Yeah.
So I would say for sure, anybody that is new to running, new to you, new to the trails, and the inkling enters their mind of running with Paul Stofko, because let's face it, you are sort of a local running legend, probably nationally as well, because I know that the ultra running community is tight knit. That's kind of a big deal for newbies, to be kicking out miles next to a guy like you. But hopefully people can get past that about them, because you're one of the best people to run with, from my experience. And you just kind of accommodate people. You just meet them right where they're at. And that is something very unique for you, I think.
Yeah, because I there's a couple times what I try to do sometimes is I go to group runs, like let's say Michigan City or LaPorte, which and I don't tell anybody who, if they don't know who I am, that's fine. And I just run with them, and they're like, oh, you know what? There's some guy that does these 200 miles, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, those guys are crazy. And I love that, because I love to be like, I'm just another runner at that point, and they don't know who I am, so we just run together, and we have discussions, and they they're new to the running community, and they don't know who I am. So I think that's nice. I always, I don't know why. I'm always welcoming people, but that does not that I'm mad at people that think. I just feel like I don't ever want that people to be fairly intimidated. But again, we do these long stuff, but I always enjoy another group that I don't know really well, and there's always good conversation. That's what running is, and whatever aspects, and and we'll get a lot of, like, I get just I get questions all the time about doing particular races or whatever. I mean, that's, I coached before, so I'm always open to. There's no like hidden secret or my runs are like you can't see them on Strava or something ridiculous like that. You can go on Strava and look on my whatever I do every day. I post some of my stuff on my line or whatever, but it is funny, because then the funny thing now is a lot of people know me as a race director, and then when I come out to a run and do a race, they're like, oh my God, you're a pretty good runner. And I said, well, that's, I said, you only know me as a race director now. I'll run a trail race here and there, but I just don't do it as often as thing. I still get, can be halfway decent on a shorter distance stuff, but it is funny because everybody comes in, you go to a small race and everybody's like, oh my God, Paul's here. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, come on, relax, everybody. I just like, this is a training run or whatever. It is funny, but then sometimes I feel like I just don't want people to be like, I can't approach this person because he's whatever, and it's not. And you can vouch for that. I've never been like, if you got a question or something, that I'm totally willing to. Everything that I tell you, that we have these great experiences as runners from different events that we do, and I've never been like, oh, I'm not going to tell you about that or whatever. But I've always been willing to tell you. And I think for me as a runner, and especially as an ultra runner, you make mistakes like, I make mistakes like every year. Like last year I had a race, just got dehydrated and threw up, and everybody's like, oh, I said, that still stuff happens. I think that's the nice thing about you. On any given day, you can have the greatest race in your life, or you can just be like, God, I just want to get through this and get done. Even me, I have horrible races and stuff like that, or do stupid stuff that I shouldn't do. And I think that I like to, I don't shy away from that. I think a lot of times when people look at Facebook, and you can always talk, or social media and just in general, we always harp on the positives, which I do enjoy the positives. But if I have a bad race, I say, you know what, I did stupid things, I threw up and did this stuff, but I finished, so I think that if you show that there's weakness or things that can go wrong, even for a person that's been running for a long time, I think that helps to bring people in the fold. Like, hey, this guy been running, all this time, and he even makes mistakes because you're human. You just, whatever and I tend to there's some aspects of where I get a little cocky, like, oh, I can eat this, or I can do this and it won't be fun. Then I, screw up or get sick or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well then that, I even make those mistakes.
Note
So I
to
think
self.
that, yeah. And that helps. I hope that helps when I post stuff like that, where like, hey, even Paul has a bad day. It's all right. You can have a bad day. And
I think it probably does help. And not that anybody wishes for you to have,
no.
anything but success. But again, it does kind of humanize you. And I think so many people are scared to make mistakes. It's like a primary reason that people don't start something that they're passionate about, because they're worried about the perfectionism, or having all their ducks in a row, or just wanting to right out the door be perfect. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall. It's more about getting up and trying again. And I feel like people just are scared to do that. I think it has a lot to do with them feeling like they're judged. And the fact that you put I hesitate to even call them shortcomings, because I mean, anybody that's towing the line at 100 or 200-mile race doesn't have shortcomings in that regard. But, anybody that's willing to just be transparent and real about the experience of it all, and that, I've been running for 30 plus years, but I still, screw up my hydration or nutrition or whatever it is. But I'm going to just keep going and, go on to run another day, is empowering to people to know that they can do that too. And that's okay. It's like giving themselves permission to fail in order to try again. Right. Because we don't get to where we are with anything in life unless you fail multiple times.
Correct. And I think that when I started race directing, you get humbled pretty darn quickly from either people like emailing you something about your race to whatever it may be. And I think that was a unique experience. Like I think my first directing was 2008, and I was still in Colorado, and I had a race out there. That was my first one that I actually did my whole self, ran the whole show. And that aspect of directing has a new appreciation, and coming in as a runner, you have a great advantage to understand what runners would want or whatever. But, I think for me, I was just having this discussion with Tim Feline. So Tim and I run sometimes during the week. And I was saying that our races, his races and mine, are unique to our personalities. So if you're going to Tim's race, there are unique things that Tim will have to his race that are unique to him. And for mine, I have unique things like trails and like water crossings and craziness. That's just me as my persona is coming up onto as a race director. And I can't be Tim, and Tim can't be me, which is great. That's just the way it is. But that's the nice thing about, you have these choices and whatever in terms of running. If you want to have a road race, or you want to come out and do some crazy thing that I put together, like a 5K and you run through the pond or something like that, it's Stony Run or something like that. I think that was nice aspect for me as a race director, to have another aspect of my life or my personality as being a race director. That's just my thing is, in terms of my races, I want to emphasize that, what, they're crazy, but you're not going to get this at your 5K, road race that they have every weekend. This is unique. This is like trails. This is the nature. This is tough. This is, if you finish, it's a great accomplishment. Who cares what the time is, So slowly but surely we're getting some people over to my side, but but we'll see. It's trail running, and that has a lot of my ideas or things that I envision, come from, living in Colorado, going to school in Arizona and Flagstaff. That community is super strong in terms of outdoor activities and out at trails. So for me, it's like, all right, I just want to kind of shove the Northwest Indiana community a little bit more to make it like, there's a bunch of parks that are available here in Northwest Indiana that nobody takes advantage of. I mean, a lot of the races that we have, people don't even know, I've never heard of them, or, oh my God, I didn't know this was back here. So I think that's also a nice aspect in terms of what I do as race director, is introducing people to areas that they're probably close to their house they never even thought about. And maybe you don't have to run there, but you can bring your family for a walk or something like that. I think we get to the point where we think just the dunes and that's it, dunes and the trails and the dunes. No, there's all kinds of like little smaller trails throughout the, Lake Porter, LaPorte counties that nobody is there. And so when I started doing the races, I went to all the parks departments and said, hey, what parks do you feel like they don't get used much? And let's see if we can have a race there. And they were all for it because they want people to come. I mean, that's why the parks are there. Let's use them.
I love that you sort of just bring it back to the region. I noticed your Indiana Coast hat you're wearing today too, kind of wearing that loud and proud in support of this area of the world. And, when you have traveled to different places where the terrain might be a little bit more in line with what people might think of as trail running or ultra running, it's cool to bring it back to sort of where your roots are at.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll be out in Colorado in a month from now to direct a race that I, owned since I, lived out there. And it's unique, the group that we get out there in terms of Colorado to people, in Indiana. I mean, that particular race you can get, it's easily in trail running. It's a big, usage out there for trails. I mean, the trail system that we use for this particular race in Colorado, in Loveland, Colorado, receives like over like 2 million visitors, and it's a trail system that interconnects to all their different towns and cities. And, just like how we do with like a lot of the stuff they're trying to accomplish here. So I always like to go, especially when I'm in town, is to get ideas for races or how they do it or what is the big trend. I see a lot of, and we see this now, pairings of like beer and trail running. That was fairly common when I lived out in Colorado and in Arizona. That was like, 10, 15 years, they kind of like were starting that. And then we're seeing that more, like not only as a aspect in terms of doing like a difficult race, but the camaraderie after with, alcohol. I mean, in moderation, please.
I mean, whatever gets you out on the trails, right?
Correct. And I think that is sometimes you need that camaraderie is like, hey, let's do this trail and you can hang out and talk about it. I think that's the aspect that I like with my races is like, I'll meet people that know nothing about what I do as a runner, but they know me as a race director. And they're like, hey, I did one of those crazy races that you put me in a pond. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was one of my favorite, so I like that aspect. Like they have the instant memory of that particular race because of the uniqueness of it. And that's what my races I want. Either there's a theme or the terrain or something like that makes you kind of come back. And then, that's kind of how I feel like out west, that we have to kind of bring that here. We have that camaraderie where it's not like you run the race and go home. It's more like you run the race and you hang out and talk about like, man, I'll remember that crazy hill or whatever as you enjoy your beverage or whatever. And I think that was what I enjoyed when I lived out there. And I see that here as well. But sometimes, with like a 5 or 10K road race, it's like you do something and then, you're off. I like the whole, like, just, I think that's a big ultra running thing as well. Because we're out there for a long period of time. You have family out there. I mean, we tent camp. I slept in a sleeping bag, for my 200, like on the trail right there. I mean, that's like, it's a home. Basically, you're like set up like a tent camp system out there and everybody's in it to finish, so you have that camaraderie, that aspect. That's why I enjoy a lot of the trail running and the ultras, just because of that. You'll find somebody that is from some other place in the United States, but you become best friends by the end of your 200 miler because you saw them like a gazillion times, or you helped them or gave them some Advil or something like that. I think that's the aspect that's why I enjoy what I do now. I mean, I'll still throw a periodic like 5 or 10K, but that doesn't have the thrill to me as doing a trail run, and especially a long distance one too. So and I think that everybody has to find their niche or what they enjoy. I mean, I have no qualms about people that just do, road races, but I always try to encourage people to come out, at least try a trail, just something different, it's something unique, and, maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I've had some people, has some choice words for me after certain races they have done of mine, and that's fine. If maybe you tried it, you didn't like it, then that's fine as well.
Well, it's no reflection on you, right? It's just a
No,
reflection of
no,
themselves and what they enjoy or don't enjoy. So that's
correct.
fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you need to kind of try it out. If that's not your cup of tea, that's fine. You know, the same thing with me. I, I am always kind of like, all right, what's the next big thing? You know, a lot of these now in ultra community now, the 200 miler is kind of the new 100. So everybody's doing that. And now there's races that are like multi-day, and there's 250 milers. Then there's the last person standing is another popular race in kind of our genre. And I think that I think we're more, when I first did my first ultra in 1998, we were very small community. We are still very small, but we are more out there, I guess, in terms of people understanding the ultra community and trail running and that kind of stuff. It's slowly kind of creeping into every aspect. And I think that's nice. When I first started off, the technology that we have for hydration packs and headlamps and all that stuff. I remember running a couple of my first hundreds, and we carried flashlights for, that, I mean, come on. And you didn't have any you had Gatorade, which, I still use, but now there's like gazillion, and gels were never, I can honestly remember running the Western States in 2004. And back then there was no really gel products. So what we used to do is we'd take the power bars, the ones that were really like horrible, like the big block
I remember.
ones, and you would cut them up and you'd hold them in your hand, and then the heat from your hand would make them more pliable so you could actually eat them. And that's just, there you go. That's kind of how we did it. But then, I think that's the interesting aspect of that is like, there was some person that was probably at that race was like, you know what, I can go in my kitchen and I can make, I don't know, a Cliff Bar or something like, or come up with a gel that could be a package, and I think that's the cool thing about innovation is people like me were just in these races when I was racing, and they came up like, hey, they're in their kitchen, like trying to figure out like how to make bars and how to make gels and all that. And then these companies came about. So I think that is cool. I mean, that's the nice thing about those kind of races. You're thinking, oh my, we were on the cusp of, there's somebody out there thinking of that. And, same thing. They had a passion for what they did. And then they kind of said, you know what? And I can imagine, there's probably many stories of those people like making bars and gels and all that started off, and they had to, years and years and years and trying to figure out exactly how to make that product available or how to package it and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of nice to be like, oh yeah, our early stages kind of push somebody to find the passion to, make a whole business out of it. Yeah. Can imagine that. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, that kind of brings it back to what I said earlier about, being willing to try and fail. I mean, There's a difference between people that are complaining about what is not there versus those that are creating what is not there. I mean, that's one of the reasons that my storefront, Lilulo's, opened, is because I wanted to go out to eat and there weren't enough vegan places in the area, really none. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to create that space then. So showing up in a way in your life where you're doing less complaining and more doing, I think is fantastic. So thank God for the evolution of running products to what they are today, as in vegan food as well. Paul, what in your life are you unwilling to compromise on?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think my beliefs, I tend to be, even though I'm like, positivity is like my big thing. If I see wrong, injustice, those kind of different things, I think that everybody's like, oh, well, Paul's just a nice guy and do that. But I am. But if I see some things that I believe that or just don't go with what, my internal moral compass is, then I'm going to say something. And I think that you can't compromise your moral integrity just for some reason that is, whatever, financial gain or whatever that may be. So I think that for me, that's just kind of, and then, the aspects in terms of that. So like, the Love is Love 5K, we support the LGBT community with donating money from that. I like cats. So one of our races, we donate to the cat shelters. the Bigfoot 5K. We do outdoor Afro, which is basically a organization that promotes African Americans in outdoor activities. So the nice thing about as a race director, I can do whatever I want in terms of supporting the people that are organizations or people individual that pretty much are the same thing that I support. So I think you can't compromise on what you believe in. And there's people going to be like, well, I don't agree with this or that. I mean, that's ultimately that's their decision and their opinion, but I got to do what I got to do, kind of thing. So I think for me, that is a nice aspect of like race directing, is you can kind of like go out there and support those people. And then, dunes is also, the dunes, and we do beach cleanups and that kind of stuff. That's also another big thing for me as well. So I think for me, I want to incorporate whatever I do into like my moral compass to and keep doing that kind of things. And I always tell people, one of the things that I always like to do, and then I post this on my wall, which is kind of morbid, but I was in a creating writing class like 15 years ago, and they recommend every 5 years you write your obituary. And in your obituary, you try to look at what aspects that you've been doing. And again, your obituary will grow as you get older in terms of your career or whatever. So when you look over that obituary, is there some aspects in your life that you're going to be remembered for that are not fully developed, something that you want to be known as? Work is work, and that will be whatever. But the person or the, what you want to be remembered as for whatever, I think that little like skilled writing thing that you do by writing your obituary will kind of be like, oh my God, there's maybe aspects that I need to focus in on. And as you get older, again, that, I think for me, I look internally more so than I did when I was younger. And that comes with what I do as a job, as a runner, a husband and a wife, and not a wife, but yeah, husband, and being married. But I think that's where you kind of start to go, okay, nobody's going to remember you for like, hey, you know what? Paul did a great job at work. I mean, sure, I did, but I want to remember some more than like encouraging people to kind of follow their passions and that kind of stuff. So I think for me, as I get older, that's where I'm starting to look like, okay, Paul never compromised in what he believed in. And if that's something that you get from what I do, then that's a good thing. Materialistic and stuff like that's never been big on my list. I think for me, I want people to we talk to follow your passions, to never compromise in terms of what your beliefs are. Those are important things. Those are, something you can't put that on I got a new TV set, or look at this car I got, or whatever like that. And some people that's materialistic stuff is their forte, but man, oh man, I'd rather be known as a good human, and that
I think that task of writing your obituary every 5 years is something that I'm certainly going to put into my circulations of things that I grow from.
Yeah.
Wow. What an amazing, that is like one of the single most, I feel like, important things that you can do for yourself. The more I think about that's amazing. That is like such a tool to learn about your own growth and
correct
what you've done with your time. Have you used your time, or have you wasted your time? It's like that notion, something that you've said recently is what we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived. What a way to put things in perspective.
Yeah. And the obituary is like, this is the end all come all. So when I was younger, I never really thought about obituaries, but as I get older, I read them often because a lot of my residents are in there. And a lot of the time, the residents don't really talk about their lives and what they did. And I only found out a lot of stuff about them in those obituaries, about the career they had, or they worked on secret projects during World War II, or they did that, or they traveled the world. And those aspects, it's almost like you're getting a snapshot of those individuals that you thought you kind of knew fairly well, maybe knowing them for years, working with them, but then the obituary comes out and you're like, oh my God, I did not know he worked this, or he did this for 50 years, or he was a woodworker, so I think that those obituaries, just reading them give you a snapshot of that person's life. So, if you're doing this like creative writing thing as you're looking at it, that obituary that you write, that gives a person that maybe knew nothing about you a snapshot of what you did, or what kind of person you were, whatever that may be. So, and that's the last thing you're going to get. You're gone, dead. They're going to be reading that, and you're going to be like, oh wow, Paul sounds kind of interesting. He had an interesting life. And that's the aspect that I always like about obituaries. Like, wow, there's some interesting things that happened in this individual's life. Like, and they overcome diversity or whatever. Or they were married for 70 years, or they whatever they may do. I think that encompasses your life in how many paragraphs, I guess.
Right.
And then I can tell you, like, as I've gotten older, some of the aspects that were important to me as younger, those are omitted. Like, who cares? Like, I did this, but it's like, that's not really important to me anymore.
Right.
Because you didn't have kids and you weren't married. So the obituary would be very small. I mean, technically, when I first started in college, you only could do so much. Your life experience was very small. But then every 5 years, there's dramatic things that happen, from marriage to kids to, whatever happens in your life, good, bad, and all that kind of stuff. So, and I know for me, like my writing in terms of what I did in college was I started to journal like my days, mundane things to very dramatic things. And I kind of fell out of that. And then during COVID, I started to go back. So I was journaling from probably like for 10 or 11 years through college and my first jobs and my relationship with my wife when I was dating her, and then my kids' birth. And then I kind of stopped. And then after COVID, I was like, I remember watching somebody given a presentation. They said, you should go back to journaling. You'll look back on these and those moments in time, then when you write down the journal, they start to fade, but then when you go back to the journal, everything kind of comes back. So I try to write every week something about what's going on, and most of mine were like really mundane stuff, like, I went on this date and did this, and now I'm like, well, there's Russia invaded Ukraine, this is that kind of stuff. So I tried to, now I'm more like looking at the whole world of what's going on at that time. So God knows who's going to read these journals. Maybe my kids will, but that'll give you like a slight slice of the pie in terms of what's going on in that particular thing, where maybe I'm looking internally at what's going on in my life currently, but then as the broad spec, like, we have a pandemic, and this is how I feel. This is, whatever. So I think that my hope is when my kids read it, they understand, like, what was I going, or what was I thinking? That would be great. I would love to, my parents still alive, but I would love to hear my like 40-year-old dad. Now my dad's 81. So that would be, that perspective in terms of that, like, that I think journaling is great if you can get into that. Writing obituary is great, but the journaling, even the mundane things, who knows what your kids will think about the mundane things to them.
Yeah.
They get to know who you were as that person in that particular aspect of your life. And I know I look back on my journals from like the late 90s to now, and my writing styles change to more of like internally looking at like things that are going on in the world, where in the 90s I could care less what's going on.
Right.
I was like that mundane, or like, I want to get through my chemistry test without failing, or I'm going to run a 50 miler this week. And that was pretty much it. Now I'm like, okay, look at the aspects of what's going on in our town, or developments and stuff like that, like stuff I would never in my 20s
Right.
cared.
Well, it's amazing where you're at different points in your life and what's important to you and what resonates and what doesn't.
Correct.
But what I love about the notion of journaling and wondering who's going to read it at some point is, people have the the idea of an inheritance, potentially receiving something from people that have passed, that they've left behind. I feel like finding a box full of journals from my parents would be far more valuable to me than physical things or monetary inheritance. I mean, just
Hmm.
to have the richness of knowing somebody's life, especially somebody that you loved and cared for, that's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
Paul, I have one more question for you.
Sure.
What, if you have a chance to encourage people to change their mindset on, what would it be?
Mm. I would say that in general, if you have a passion for whatever that may be, you need to pursue it. And I think that we've talked about this. There's a lot of difficulty. I mean, from running or race track, whatever I end up doing in my life, God, there's been so much setback and things that go wrong, my career, that kind of stuff. So I think that I try to encourage, and I always tell people, they think that I think people get the aspect of like, when I talk about what I do, it was very easy, like it was a straight linear road to where I wanted to go. There was like this. I mean, I stayed pretty much consistent of what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. That was my big thing. When I was out of high school and going into college, I wanted to help people. So whatever that career ended up being, that's what I kind of end up doing, But I think a lot of people get so hung up on, well, if I fail and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, geez, I think that in my aspect, and in terms of my life, every failure, every bad thing that happened to me, that's like a tapestry of your life. And if you were to, see, people always want to go back and be like, well, if I did this or that, and things would be better. I say, hell no. I would rather have all the bad things happen to me in my life, because each one was like a learning aspect or lesson in my life to make it better. And I think that, like I always tell people, your life's kind of big tapestry, like if you think of knitting, it's like a big thing. If you start to pull on that string about like, well, I want to take this away or that away, or I regret that I did that. That's not your life. What you become now from your past, all those bad things and good things that occurred in your life make you who you are now. So I think that's the issue that I always have with people. People just scared. I mean, I get it. I mean, there's stuff that I do and I'm like, holy, I don't know if this is going to work out. And I've had things that didn't work out. And I'm like, I remember a good aspect. I was like dead set on having a trail fest where in Colorado, it's very popular. We have these like 3-day kind of things where you have like an expo and you have like races and you have like, it's like a big camaraderie kind of thing. So I had like the place like rented and I was getting people to speak. And then COVID hit, and then that was the end of that. So then I never did go, so I was like, so then, for me, I'm like, all right, it's in my back burner with all the other stuff I want to do. So I'm like, you know what, it's that pretty much took a hit. Like, oh my God, I really had all this effort and time, and then COVID hit, and what are you going to do? So it's a setback, and again, that'd be something when I want to do in the future. But you're just gonna have that setbacks, and you're just gonna. I tell people, I think, and this comes back to my seniors, is never live with regret, and that was one of the aspects that I always saw in my residents, where I wish I did this, I wish I did that, but now I'm 90 and I can't do it. And that I remember many of my residents would tell me, do it, whatever it may be, even if it doesn't work out or whatever, go on this trip or whatever. If you have the advantage of doing it, do it. Because you're going to be at a point in your life that you're not going to be able to do it. And you're just going to you don't want to live with that regret. And there's a lot of people that, residents, where they did stuff that everybody told them not to do, or that's dumb or whatever, and they did it and they became successful, or they had setbacks or whatever, but they never regretted the decision that they did back then. So I think that comes back to my job. I get to hear that often. So when I have some crazy idea and I said, what the heck, what's the worst can happen? If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Maybe then it leads you to something else, or leads you to people that will do something or give you an idea or something in terms of the career. I think everything that I've done and the mistakes that I've made, something's good's come out of it eventually. Not that at the time I wasn't thinking good things,
Right.
but yeah, everything good came out of that. So I guess in terms of the aspect, just do what you want to do. you don't want to be, especially coming from a person that works with older individuals, you don't want to regrets when you get older, because they'll eat at you. You think that you'll have a different life, and you can't do that now that you're in your 80s or 90s or something like that. So let's live a life where you lived and be able to do what you wanted to do, and you'll never regret it when you get older.
Paul, this has been such a gift. I've loved this conversation so much. Thank you for your time and your perspective. Tell us where we can find you and how we can support you, and maybe, what some of your upcoming races are.
Sure. So I am owner of the Crazy Legs Race Series. So your best bet, just put Crazy Legs Race Series in the Google machine, and it'll tell you everything. We're on Facebook and social media, Instagram, and all that kind of stuff. In terms of races, well, I will be out in Colorado for my next one, but you're always welcome to come down. That's June 5th in Loveland, Colorado, but more local. We have the Love is Love 5K run walk, which occurs at Blum County Park on June 23rd. And again, if you go on to the Facebook stuff, it'll say all the information. And then I think we have the Jennie Hamilton 5-miler memorial run at Stony Run Park in Hebron, and that's, I believe, July 11th. So those are my two ones that are coming up. I'll have more. Usually I take a break for the summer, just because I'm running ultras at that time, and then I'll be back in the fall. But those are the next two ones, local ones, except for the Colorado one. So
fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to share this with whoever is willing to listen once I publish this, and share the conversation with other people. Thank you, Paul, so much for your time today.
No problem.
I'll see you soon.
All righty.
That was amazing. I can't tell you enough how much I loved that conversation with Paul. If you enjoyed it as well, please rate, review, and at the very least, share with other people. That's how we grow. That's how I'm continuing to be able to show up with you every week, is by you telling other people about it and continuing to listen yourself. I appreciate you so much, and I hope you're getting just as much out of these conversations as I am. Look in the show notes for ways to stay connected with Paul and myself, and we will see you again next Thursday. Bye, friends.